topics and opinions expressed in the following show are solely those of the host and their guests and not those of W4CY Radio, its employees, or affiliates. We make no recommendations or endorsements for radio show programs, services, or products mentioned on air or on our web. No liability, explicit or implied, shall be extended to W4CY Radio or its employees or affiliates. Any questions or comments should be directed to those show hosts. Thank you for choosing W4CY Radio.
Welcome to Leadership for Life with Gina Gardner on W4CY Radio and Talk4 TV. Join your host, who is a multiple #1 international best-selling author, motivational speaker, empowerment and transformational leadership coach and trainer. She's the founder of Genuinely-You and has 30 years experience of helping people step into their genuine, authentic power. And now, here is Gina Gardner, your host of Leadership for Life.
Hello there, and welcome to today's show. So lovely to see you, or for you to be with me today. We've got a great theme today, which is, are you a dabbler or a thought leader? We're living at a time of humongous change, where there is a real shift in consciousness, where people who act with integrity, compassion, and courage, who are ready to step up and be leaders, will find that there are the most amazing opportunities. But I want to spend the first part of this program talking about the patterns of behavior that you engage with. And then I've got a great guest for you today. Tiffany Youngren is going to join us. She is an amazing lady who has her own podcast business, and is really adept at helping people develop into really critical thought leaders, people who are going to make a difference and who are going to use their voice in order to help others make a difference too. But before she joins us, I just want you to think about the behaviors that you engage in. We all have patterns of behavior. And many people self-sabotage, or maybe not as strong as self-sabotage, but they engage in practices which keep them playing smaller than they have the capacity to do. This is not a time for the faint-hearted. This is a time for people to step up, to recognize as they become more consciously aware, and that they understand that there is a shift in consciousness, that they're going to be prepared to take action. It's not a time for people to dabble. It's not a time for people to play small. And one of the things that I've noticed with the many clients that I have worked with is that when we've started working together, one of the common themes really is that people have a sense that they are here on this earth to do something, but they actually limit themselves. You know, what will people think if I stand up and step into my power and tell other people what I think? How would it be if I own my own power? People will think that I'm ego-driven or that I'm boastful. When the reality is that when you own your genuine power, it's not about you being more powerful than somebody else. It's about you being differently powerful. It is about you recognizing all of your strengths and celebrating them and looking for areas of development and being prepared to do something about it. You know, when I think of a dabbler, I think of a duck, and the way ducks dabble in the water, that there's not a consistent big action. There's lots and lots of little actions as they peck at the weed and so on. And I've known many people who are dabblers, and they come in many forms. They're the dabblers that, you know, they don't really throw their hat into the ring. They just play at the edges. They don't commit. And one of the things that strikes me is life is not a spectator sport. You know, as we are creating this program, we're in the middle of the Olympics. And if you look at the people who are now actually engaged, the sportsmen and women in the Olympics, and in a week or so, the Paralympics, there is nothing about the dabbler there. They are people who are truly committed, fully committed to become the best they can be in their sport. And that's the sort of attitude that is so important for the leaders of tomorrow and the leaders of now, really. The other pattern of behavior that I've noticed lots and lots of people engaging in is they go on to the next bright, shiny thing. They start doing something and they're very excited and very gung-ho, and life gets perhaps a little bit tricky, and off they go, and there's something else. And then there's something else. So they don't ever see things through. And I want you to think about, what are your patterns of behavior? You've heard me talk so many times about becoming the journalist in your own life. And becoming the journalist means really investigating how you turn up moment by moment, day by day, because there will be patterns of thoughts, emotions, actions, and language that you engage in habitually. Some of them are serving you and some of them are not. But what we need as we move into this new era are people who recognize that they are powerful beyond measure, actually, if they tune into their inner wisdom and into universal consciousness. If they allow themselves to be the best version of themselves today and use that as a platform to be the best version of them moving on. I mean, you've heard these themes many times from me, and I make no apology for that because I believe it's so important. But what do you think is a thought leader? What's your view in terms of your purpose? What value have you got in terms of experience, expertise, skill set, insights that would be of value to other people? And one of the things that I've noticed from so many of the leaders that I've worked with is that they don't recognize the value of who they are and what they can offer. It's just what they do. And that shows me that, that they have reached a level of unconscious competence, and that I am sure that many of them, if not all, have something really valuable to offer other people, even if it's at the level of the experience that they have had in their lives, nothing to do with business. And they have an insight that would save other people time or aggravation or frustration. But we're going to really delve into what is a thought leader and how do thought leaders not only become thought leaders, but how they can make a difference in the world, a positive difference. And so after the break, I'm going to introduce Tiffany Youngren to you, and we're going to explore that theme. So don't go away. We'll see you in a very few minutes. Thank you.
You have been listening to Gina Gardner on Leadership for Life. We'll be back after this quick break. Want to get the best out of life personally and professionally? Are you ready to step into a life which excites and fulfills you? Well, the right place for you is Leadership for Life with Gina Gardner on W4CY Radio and Talk4 TV. We will share with you stories from inspiring people, a wide range of guest experts, and lots of practical strategies to help you get the very best out of your personal and professional life. Leadership for Life is a radio and TV show focused on helping you live a happier, more successful, and fulfilling life. Join international best-selling author, motivational speaker, empowerment and transformational leadership coach and trainer, Gina Gardner, live every Thursday, 1 p.m. Eastern Time on W4CY Radio and Talk4 TV. Become the leader of your own life. Gina Gardner's #1 international best-selling book, Thriving Not Surviving, The 5 Secret Pathways to Happiness, Success, and Fulfillment, provides you with the foundational principles on which to become the best leader of your own life. It's available as an ebook, paperback, hardback, and as an audio from genuinely-you.com, or also from Amazon. Every one of the principles have been proven to work for the countless people who have used them, including the author. Now, let's put them to work for you. If you're ready to discover your true leadership life design, accelerate your journey with an invitation to join Gina for Leadership for Life VIP Day. Choose your journey of self-discovery where Gina will help you navigate your way to happiness, success, and fulfillment. To find out more, email gina@genuinely-u.com. Welcome back to Leadership for Life. Here is your host, Gina Gardner.
Welcome back. Podcasting is something that's become incredibly popular over the last few years. And those people who want to use their voice to be heard ignore podcasting at your peril. Now, my guest, Tiffany Youngren, has got great expertise. She runs an agency and she helps people use podcasts in the most positive way. Before I invite her to join us, I'm going to read you her bio. As you know, I always read the bios so I don't lose any of the richness. Tiffany Youngren is the founder of OMH Agency and the host of the podcast Next Up Nation, where she provides coaching, strategies, and a profit platform to help podcasters with vision go from dabbling to dominating so that they can become preeminent thought leaders in their industries. She lives in Billings, Montana, USA, with her husband of 28 years and is often surrounded by her adult kids and grandkids. So without more ado, I'd like to welcome Tiffany Youngren.
Gina, hello.
Hi there, and thank you so much for joining me today. I'm really excited about the conversation we're going to have.
Oh, of course. Thank you for the invitation.
Oh, pleasure. Under a bit of pressure because you're an expert on podcasting. Before we get into your agency and what you do and how you help thought leaders, tell us, how did you get into this? You know, what took you into this industry? We'd love to hear a bit of your story.
Yeah, well, I mean, I, as you know, I love podcasting, not just the act of doing it. In fact, I'm reluctant about my own podcast. I'm always testing, but I love helping other people really get out and get their message out. What you were talking about earlier just really resonated with me. When I was in my early 20s, I met my husband. I had grown up in a family of, my dad was a mailman, my mom was an insurance agent, middle class, latchkey kid in the 80s. And just really normal, really, awesome. But no one was not, I didn't see the entrepreneurs in my life. Normal was, you go to work, you hate your job, you go home, and then you figure out how to cope with it, right? Then you escape as often as you can. Yes. And that's what I thought was normal. And I married this man who was in a family full of entrepreneurs. So we were real estate agents and started several businesses which flourished. Some were awesome, some were very successful and some crashed because, for real, that's how it rolls. And
it certainly does, yeah.
And so through the years, I was the marketer. I was the one who needed to put together the messaging and the communication. My husband's the brave one who can get out there and talk to anybody and make those phone calls, and he just makes magic happen. So we both had our really clear roles, but marketing really was my jam. That's what I did for myself. All my friends were entrepreneurs, so I was making WordPress websites for them for fun. Our businesses were successful, so I didn't charge them at the time because it was I'm doing fine. I wouldn't even know what to charge. And so through the years, that was kind of my role. And then in 2008, the real estate crash, we were just crushed. I mean, we lost over $6 million worth of assets and worked our way through that. So, that's a long story in its own self. But the bottom line is we moved to Montana we moved from Montana to Texas to Montana for family reasons. And when we got here, we had no jobs. We never thought we could buy a house again. And we ended up buying a house on Craigslist. And, we were working within no time. But of course, I was in marketing and development. Then I started my own company because I'm just not built for working for somebody else. So, So we got on our feet, we got back to it. And So I started my marketing agency in 2016, and from there, in the great pivot of 2020, I had a couple coaches, and they were both like, you're so good at podcasting. You've got these systems that you're able to just do it like clockwork. You should share that with other people. Like, you shouldn't just hog that. You should, everybody wants to podcast. Everybody's at home. Go help them. So, long story, that's how I got here. And I absolutely love it. We're in real estate again, too, which is just a dream. It's also in my DNA. So I feel like I'm doing just all my favorite things through podcasting and real estate.
There's so much richness in your story, and I'd like to unpick a few things. Why do you think podcasting has become so powerful?
I think the biggest reason is that we're just kind of the boss of us. Like, we get to get out and we get to share our story. And, you watch these people who are on TV and they've got very successful television shows and they're podcasting. And I was watching a program and hearing them talk about their podcasts. And that's what just stood out to me, was they just get to go be them, and people can listen or don't. And the way that it resonates with people, especially in a time where we're all, we're kind of coming out of it, but we've just been craving connection. And so to have these people who are normally on a pedestal just say words that are real, we connect with that. And then guess what? We're at the same level. We can go out, grab a microphone. We're on, I'm on Spotify. Joe Rogan's on Spotify. It's kind of where YouTube was in the beginning, where you could just go out there and make your own show. And whether you want something in particular out of it or not, it's fulfilling. And the action you think about in business, rarely do we get the luxury of having something that we can do to grow our business where we actually enjoy it. Usually we're like, oh crap, I got to make my phone calls, or things like that. But it's enjoyable, and yet we're still growing our business. So I think it's amazing. I'm so grateful that more people are doing it and able to benefit from that.
I think you're absolutely right. There are people I've spoken to who said podcasts who know it's not for me. It's like public speaking, and speaking into a camera is really difficult. And there are people. There is that element to it, learning to be comfortable in front of a camera and seeing yourself on camera. And of course, we're always more critical of ourselves than we are of other people, aren't we? What makes a great podcast?
Oh, gosh. That's like, what makes a great food. I feel like there's so many genres and so many. I mean, I have a Facebook group called Podcast Club, and people share different podcasts that they like. And honestly, some of them I'm like, I can't believe you podcast about that. That's so weird. And then they have all these followers. And so ultimately, I think what makes a really great podcast, if I were to make a decision on that, would be just being really clear about what you're doing it for. I have a really difficult time. I can listen to a lot of different kinds of podcasts. Even if I don't really love the topic, I can still enjoy it if I feel like I get it. Like, I get where they're trying to go with this. So having that clear, and like what we've talked about in the past, the audience promise, where this is why I'm doing a podcast. When you listen to it, this is what you're going to get. I appreciate that a lot in a podcast.
Yeah. And one of the things that strikes me is that the podcasts that I listen to is the ones that really resonate with me is when I feel that people are being authentic, that they're not trying to be something that they're not. That doesn't mean to say then that people are being the best version of themselves, but they're not. There are some podcasts which come across and they don't feel as if we're seeing the real person. And I think when that person allows themselves to be truly who they are, and they are passionate about their subject, then even if it's not a subject that I've been particularly drawn to, that their enthusiasm and their passion comes through. And as a result, I enjoy that.
That's so true.
So I'd like to explore the principle of being a thought leader, because it's a title that has a real resonance to it. It's got a real vibrational energy, which and I love it. that you are a thought leader. So what would your definition of a thought leader be?
Gosh, that's such a good question. And I feel really on the spot. Like, I feel like I should have looked that up first or something, because I have a friend who is the authority on becoming an authority. And so I know that there's a lot of nuances, but I can tell you what it means to me. So
and that's actually, and it's really, I think it's important to say this to people who are watching. We often assume that the question is asking for somebody else's authority.
Mm-hmm.
And what I'm really interested in is your authentic authority.
I love that.
What do you believe? Because that's the bit that's important to me, because I'm listening to you. And I think lots of people try to think that something, that what they have to say isn't as important. And I would disagree with that.
Right.
So I'd love to know your thoughts.
Or that their friend who is the authority might be listening to this show.
There is that.
So there's that. But having said that, I'm fine. And I just want to bundle that too with just this idea of dabbling versus, being a thought leader, and this idea of, like you just said, we don't have to be like this one version of something. I think that some of the pitfalls we run into, number one, is comparing ourselves. Like you just saw happen. That like, I don't know as much about thought leadership, so I don't know if I should answer. But the fact of the matter is we're a community, right? And so the more that we're hearing feedback from different people, it does take amount of courage to be able to step out and say, okay, I'm going to tell you what I think about it, even though I might take some heat. And quite honestly, what happens is the more that you are a leader in any capacity, whether it's thought leadership, business leadership, you are out there and the arrows are pointed at you. And I think that that's a lot of times what makes people afraid to step out. But like you said earlier, we have an obligation to the world, really, that we get out and say stuff, because what if what we have to say, it's not just our story, it's a story that belongs on this world at this time. And so with thought leadership, I you look at it at the two things. Number one is the thought part, where you hopefully, and that really separates podcasting, right? Like, not everybody who's a podcaster is a thought leader. Thank goodness.
Absolutely not.
Sometimes you're just talking about stuff. Like, they're breaking down what thought leaders are saying, But as a thought leader, talking specifically to that, we're taking things, we're thinking about it, right? So we're looking up. When I'm talking about something, I've researched it, I've listened to other people about it, and I'm curating, really. But I'm stepping out there, curating and leading. And what's leading? It's like, well, I took one step forward and said, hey, I'll help in getting the bus going in this direction, So to me, that's really what it's all about. And it's, when we talking about dabbling, I love it, because I just don't feel like you can be a leader without stopping dabbling. And so all morning I've been thinking about this, and the whole idea of burning the ships just kept coming to mind. And this idea that we have to let go of the security of being protected by not speaking out and taking that step, but having that comfort, that option will make us step back again. You know what I'm saying? So it's really a matter of, like, it takes a great amount of courage and endurance, really, to be a leader, doesn't it?
I think that's so true. It's interesting because obviously in preparation for the show, I was thinking about what makes a thought leader. And I think for me, there are a number of things. One is that most people think habitually. They don't actively, consciously think. They go into those patterns. And so a thought leader is somebody who steps out of that frame of, that's how I've always done it, that's how my thought is. And they probably don't even think about it, because they give it no more thought than their nails growing or their hair growing. And so that consciousness around the thoughts that they are thinking. And as you absolutely rightly say, leaders have to lead from the front. And in doing so, they have to step outside or away from the crowd. And of course, as human beings, we like to be part of the crowd. It's part of our hot wiring, isn't it? Mm-hmm. Cavemen and women, knew that if they were not part of the community, that they wouldn't survive. But we need people who are brave enough to actually step outside and say, if we always do what we've always done, we're going to continue to get what we've got. And I look at the world and I think we need leaders to think fresh thoughts, to find a better way of doing things if we are to survive and thrive as a human race, and if the planet is to survive too.
Yeah, that's so true.
So I think for me the difference between the dabble and the thought leader is that people are nailing their colors to the mast and saying, this is what I stand for. This is what I'm working towards. This is my why. And if you know your why and you can articulate that to other people, then other people can engage with it. But if you don't, then nobody's going to know, are they?
Exactly. Well, it takes trust for people to follow. And
It
so
does.
They have to look and know that you have a vision for it. And that's probably why that makes podcasting, the podcast better, is that whole idea of going, I trust you with this time I'm about to give you. And the same with thought leadership. You're listening and you're like, it's like food in your brain. And so you have to trust that person knows where they're going.
Yes.
So you have to go, this is where I'm going. Otherwise nobody knows. And then they don't have that security.
And so that capacity to communicate your vision, whether you're talking about your program or your business or your product or just your way of being, having a platform to do that. We've never before had the opportunity to speak to people in all four corners of the world at the same time, at the press of a button.
Yeah, it's crazy.
I wonder what people, 100 years ago, 50 years ago, would think of that. It wouldn't have. It would seem like science fiction, wouldn't it?
It would have, yeah, for sure.
So, when you're working with people, what do you find are the common themes that you need to talk to people about in order to help them move forward?
Well, it almost always comes down to two things. One is that vision, having that promise. Like, I am leading you and you can trust me that when you come here, this is where I'm taking you.
Yeah.
So that's the one thing. And the second thing is always getting the word out, because, if we don't somehow get it out to everybody, we're all alone, leading, being brave. And the 5 people behind us, you're just hoping are, kind, and so the other thing is promotion, getting the show out into more people's hands. And so usually I have the same advice for that every time. When I do a consultation or I do the hot seat on our Next Step Nation podcast, I'll break down, here's some areas of opportunity. And then I'm like, okay, if I'm the boss of the world, if I could make you do one thing to grow your show in the next 30 days, and always it comes down to those two things. Yeah.
And isn't it interesting that, for me, the issue is that people have to be proactive. You can't just sit back and expect it to happen as if by, magic. You do need to take consistent action to make it happen, rather than the grand gesture. People are very good at the grand gesture, aren't they? And then expecting it to, well, I've done it once, so it should happen.
Exactly. Nothing happened. I must be a failure. And that leads to that whole endurance side of the leadership too, and why people are afraid to really dig in, or they get attracted to another shiny object, is that our perception of what failure is skewed. And so if we don't get the type of success we expected within the time frame we expect it to come, it's a failure. We should just move on to the next thing. And oh, look, that's got promise, and ultimately there's a saying that it takes 10 years to be an overnight success. And I was researching from the interview I'm doing later today, And she had a guest on her show that talked about the same thing. She's, got an insurance company and was saying, she's hugely successful now, but she's like, I'm 7 years in. I feel like I just turned the corner and I'm feeling that success I've been working for. So I just think we need to kind of rewire ourselves to not give up, whether we're listening and taking advice from a podcast or whether we are being that thought leader and continuing down that path.
Oh, it's a great lesson for life, isn't it? I always give the example of Dyson, the guy who made the Hoovers.
Okay.
Or vacuum cleaners. Before he made his first saleable vacuum cleaner, he made pretty well 2,000 prototypes.
Wow.
He's now a multi-millionaire. You can find his vacuum cleaners all over the world. But if he'd given up at 1,999, he would not be the overnight success that he is now.
Well, and beyond that, he would have left it thinking he failed again.
Yeah.
Because that's what happens to a lot of us is we'll quit at that 11th hour and go, oh, I failed again. There I go. And then that self mindset's so important. So
yes,
that's incredible.
Is
that's an incredible story.
It is, isn't it? Now, you have an agency. So what is it that your agency actually does for people?
What we do is we help podcasters. Right now, we've got a platform that we help podcasters with getting the best guests on autopilot. So as you know, you've been through my system.
I have indeed.
It's something that honestly, it's what I've used for years. And I've just redeveloped it and improved it. And it's really become the crown jewel of the services that we provide. So I do help with coaching and things like that, and promotional consulting, as well as we've got some systems that we can help with. But right now, my number one thing, because I feel like the guests are the number one thing about podcasts. It's why I podcast. If I didn't meet people, I probably wouldn't podcast. I don't need to hear myself talk. But I really love those relationships so much. And so and also this whole idea of loving, I just have such a passion for anyone brave enough to do this thing. And so I want to connect with more people. So getting to work with podcasters to get more guests on their show, to take that relationship beyond just that moment. So I've got a platform that shares exactly that. Super simple. I don't even have an assistant who helps me with my booking. I just do it myself. Because, well, actually my system does it for me. so that's what brilliant. We do. We help and then I invest in real estate, but really my agency, that's what we're all about, is helping people brave enough to be thought leaders, get out there and set sail.
And, people listening to this, and I should think that there are many of our audience who are entrepreneurs and business people who perhaps haven't got a podcast and are thinking, oh, I should, I must, I need to, and thinking, oh, I don't know where to start. And like any journey, it starts with the first step. So I think a really great way forward is to contact you and to start doing things the right way from step one. I've been doing radio shows now for a couple of years, and what I do now in terms of the backroom stuff is so different to when I first started. And you make lots of mistakes and grow and learn from those. And podcasting is no different, is it?
Absolutely, that's absolutely true.
So, what equipment do people need? There'll be people saying, "Well, no, I can't do it. I haven't got the right equipment." What do they need?
Well, ultimately, you need a microphone and just start simple. A lot of times, I think the biggest problem just drives me crazy. So honestly, if you would rather do it the way I'm going to tell you not to do it, you should not call me, because really it just drives me crazy. But people want to go in and they want it just right? And they want to have this expensive equipment and all these things, but you don't do it. Like, get a decent microphone. So whatever you can afford, get. If you want to splurge, that's what I would splurge on, is the audio. But from there, you can, I know you use a really great recording platform, but even if all you're doing is Zoom or Skype, there are also audio, social audio platforms that now are starting to record and making it easier to create an entire show like Fireside and Clubhouse. Excuse me, and Clubhouse. But just keep it simple because it's proof of concept. You were just talking about it, where what your show is now is so different than what it was before. So imagine putting thousands of dollars into it, which I've seen people do, drives me crazy, because a month later you can be like, I wish, now that I know I've done it, I say do 10 episodes as simply as you can, but please do get a decent mic, but do as simply as you can. And attach yourself to somebody. Like, you're going to get more advice than you will ever. It's information overload. And I feel like if we have too many choices, we'll make none. A confused mind says no. And so take one person that resonates with you, that you're like, I get this person when they talk, it makes sense. If you start to hear other advice that contradicts it, go back to that person and say, this is what this person's saying. Why do you choose that you do it that way? But find somebody that you trust that will take you on that journey, because it's the making those adjustments that will make it'll just make your experience so much better, and you're less likely to quit, quite honestly.
It's such great advice. And one of the other things that I did before I started my own podcast is that I was guest on lots of podcasts, and I learned how to do it well. And I learned I don't want to do it like that.
That's great.
And it, not just in terms of the program itself, but also in terms of the, how they treated me as a guest, what information I had, whether I was doing the chasing up for information and so on. And also it gave me an opportunity to be much more relaxed in front of the camera and using a microphone. So that's another way to get started. But ultimately, whatever you do, you just have to sometimes just take the plunge, don't you? And just get going.
Exactly. It's kind of like working out. As soon as you hit record, it's too late to quit. You're doing it. You're in it. So do something that just, or jumping into the pool, if it's cold and you're like, I'm like that. I don't like being cold. But as soon as I'm in it to win it. So, so just
girl after my own heart doesn't like the cold, and yet you live in Montana. It gets cold in Montana, doesn't it?
Oh, it's a very rugged weather here. But there's no better geography than where my family is. That's my saying. So.
Well, we were supposed to come to Montana last year as part of a holiday, which got cancelled because of COVID, and it was then brought forward to this year, and it's been cancelled again. But I'm going to get there. It's on my bucket list.
Oh, good.
I really want to. I want to do the northwestern states of America.
Oh, good. Well, hit me up for sure.
Brilliant. Well, look, we're almost at the end of the time that we have together. One of the things that we always do is that as a proud member of B1G1, that's B1 buy one give one, that I ask all of my guests to choose one of 3 projects for genuinely you to donate to on their behalf. And for every 100 listeners, we give a meal to somebody who is hungry. So please, if you're listening to this, please spread the word, get people to download, because the more downloads, the more people listening live, the more we are able to donate to someone or to people to help them be to feel full rather than hungry when they go to bed. And if you're a business, it's a great way to give, because they've organized it in such a way where it's easy to do. It doesn't have to cost you a huge amount of money, and all of the expenses of the charity that's running the project is done by a separate charity. So every penny donated goes towards one of the amazing projects, and there are thousands around the world. And you have chosen a project, have you not?
I did. The Water for Kids.
So we are going to donate to provide life-saving water for children in Tanzania. It strikes me in 2021 that there are still millions of people who haven't got clean water, where children are having to drink water full of bugs and disease, that it is just not right. So a new 28 to 40 meter rope pump enables safe water to be extracted from a well more easily. It's less strenuous for the women and children who collect the water, and it's protected from potentially polluted shallow aquifers. So you're going to help improve the health of the children and the adults within the village where the rope well is going to be constructed. So thank you very much for that. And thank you so much for being my guest. Any pearl of wisdom to leave, and where can people actually reach you?
Well, I think my pearl of wisdom is listen to Gina. I will say when I interviewed you, my daughter actually helps me with a lot of the editing and pulling content, and she was just like enamored with what you're saying.
You.
And she's a go-getter. So I really appreciate the message that you're putting out there and everything. And as far as where people can find me, you can go to OMH Agency and .com or anywhere on social media. That's usually my handle. And our podcast, Next Up Nation. If you're interested in podcasting, we've got a masterclass series as well as some hot seats where I dig into people's actual shows. They're brave enough, like Gina, to open up and be vulnerable and talk about that. So on all of the podcasting platforms, you can find us there.
Thank you very much indeed. So a real big thank you for joining us today. All of your details will be in the show notes. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Don't go away. The show isn't finished. We've got a short break. I'll see you then. Thanks, Tiffany.
Thanks, Gina.
You have been listening to Gina Gardner on Leadership for Life. We'll be back after this quick break. Want to get the best out of life personally and professionally? Are you ready to step into a life which excites and fulfills you? Well, the right place for you is Leadership for Life with Gina Gardner on W4CY Radio and Talk4 TV. We will share with you stories from inspiring people, a wide range of guest experts, and lots of practical strategies to help you get the very best out of your personal and professional life. Leadership for Life is a radio and TV show focused on helping you live a happier, more successful, and fulfilling life. Join international best-selling author, motivational speaker, empowerment and transformational leadership coach and trainer, Gina Gardner, live every Thursday, 1 p.m. Eastern Time on W4CY Radio and Talk4 TV. Become the leader of your own life. Gina Gardner's #1 international best-selling book, Thriving Not Surviving, The 5 Secret Pathways to Happiness, Success, and Fulfillment, provides you with the foundational principles on which to become the best leader of your own life. It's available as an ebook, paperback, hardback, and as an audio from genuinely-u.com, or also from Amazon. Every one of the principles have been proven to work for the countless people who have used them, including the author. Now, let's put them to work for you. If you're ready to discover your true leadership life design, accelerate your journey with an invitation to join Gina for Leadership for Life VIP Day. Choose your journey of self-discovery where Gina will help you navigate your way to happiness, success, and fulfillment. To find out more, email Gina at genuinely-u.com. Welcome back to Leadership for Life. Here is your host, Gina Gardner.
Hi there. Great interview, and I want to pick up on some of the themes that came out of that interview. At the beginning, Tiffany talked about the fact that she had been part of a family where normal was that you got a job, which you hated, that you managed your life around trying to sustain that job, even though you hated it. And I want you to think about your life, and it could be your job, it could be your relationship, it could be where you live. And I want you to think about how well does it fit you? Are you happy? Are you contented that the job that you have, the relationship that you have, the way of living that you have is healthy, and healthy in a holistic way, physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, and financially. I was talking to somebody this morning, and we were talking about people's financial situation. And I know there are many people who are struggling at the moment. And there are also many people who feel trapped in their job because, well, what would pay the mortgage? How would I manage if I gave up what I was doing? And I think that the first thing to do is to really audit where you are now. What's working in your life? What's not? And if you're interested, email me and I'll send you an audit life wheel that will help you identify how you need to focus on areas of your life which are giving you less satisfaction. Now, you might turn around to me and say, well, I can't get past the finances. But it's interesting, the principle that you can't actually be financially free if you have a mindset that means that you're struggling to pay your electricity bill. You can't be the illumination for other people unless you work on yourself first. Now, I've worked with many people who have struggled financially. But when you look at their mindset, their beliefs, their behaviors, they very often underpin debt. They underpin lack. If it's a relationship that is not satisfying, you can, I'm no doubt, identify who your perfect partner is. But are you a perfect partner? Because you can't change other people. What you can do is change you. You can change the way in which you operate. You can change your beliefs, change the way you speak, change the way you act. And that in turn will help change the way you feel. Now, there's no guarantee that it will change the other person, but there is no doubt if you start to behave and react differently, that breaks that habitual pattern and allows them to then to do things differently too. The life audit wheel is quite useful because it highlights the fact that unless you are in balance, unless within your life that you have a job, the relationships generally within, whether it's a special person, with yourself first and foremost, with your family, with your friends, with your colleagues, whether you have things in your life that fill your batteries up, things that give you great satisfaction and a sense of fun and opportunity, whether you have things in your life in terms of looking after your health, the whole 9 yards needs to be in balance. Otherwise, it's like trying to drive on a wheel that's got a puncture. And it's very clunky and very uncomfortable. But your life is your responsibility. If you don't do anything about it, then nobody's going to come knocking on your front door and say, I'm going to solve everything. The fairy in Cinderella is not going to come and wave her magic wand and you'll find yourself marrying a prince. You've got to take control of your life if you want your life to be different. Now, if you're satisfied and happy in your life, great. But if you're not, then rather than looking to other people to solve it, look to yourself. And the first thing to do is to look at what are your thoughts like? What are your actions like? What's your language like? Because you are generating the quality of your life. Now, does that mean that life isn't challenging? No, it doesn't. But even if life is challenging, you can still create the best possible opportunities for yourself in the way in which you operate. And there's lots of things to help you. Go to genuinely-you.com. And you'll find lots of free resources. Join the free membership with genuinelyu.com. If you want to have some intensive help, then go to ginagardnerassociates.co.uk. There are lots of 1 and 2 day intensives that will help you. All of the programs that I have created, whether they are free or paid, and there's lots of both, are designed to help you take charge of your life. So become the thought leader of your life, the person whose thoughts are literally leading your life. You are the leader of your life if you choose to be, or you can let other people do it. And the whole purpose of this program, the whole why, is to help you become the leader of your own life. Please spread the word, get other people to listen to it, download it, watch it, because in doing so, you can give them the gift to become the leader of their own lives. I look forward to seeing you next week. Got a great guest next week, and we're going to be talking about menopause. And you might think that's just for women, but remember, men are working and living with women too. So find out about the impact of menopause and how you can thrive through that process. Half the population go through it, and half the population are involved in the sense that they know, love, and work with women who are going through it. So be the leader of your life. Take care. Bye-bye now.
You have been listening to The Leadership for Life with your host, Gina Gardner. Make sure you tune in to W4CY Radio and Talk 4 TV next Thursday and every Thursday at 1 p.m. Eastern Time for more Leadership for Life. If you missed any part of this episode or just want to hear or see it again, you can find the archive of the TV show on Talk 4 TV's YouTube channel and the podcast of The Leadership for Life on iHeartRadio, Pandora, Spotify, Amazon Music, and wherever you listen to your podcast.